The office was too quiet. Elena stood by the desk, the sound of her own breathing loud against the hum of the air conditioner. A stack of paper sat before her, edges curled and jagged. She reached out, running a thumb over the top envelope, then pulled her hand back as if the paper were hot. These were not just invoices. They were markers of a shrinking runway. She looked at the blank appointment book, its pages pristine and taunting. 3 months in, and the only thing growing was the pile of debt. She stepped away, pacing the small, cramped room. The floorboards groaned under her weight, a sharp sound that shattered the stillness. She stopped by the window, watching the city traffic move in steady, purposeful lines below. She returned to the desk, pressed her palms flat against the wooden surface, and stared down at the unpaid bills again. The math did not change. Every number was a demand she could not meet. She did not move. She waited for a solution that refused to appear. The phone screen lit up, casting a cold blue glow across her desk. A notification pinged an update from Sarah, a classmate from her final year of training. Elena tapped the screen. The text was short, direct, and final. Sarah had just accepted a senior partnership at one of the city's most stable firms. Elena read the words twice, then a third time. The reality of the message sat heavy in the room, making the silence feel even more suffocating than before. She remembered the classrooms they shared, the late-night study sessions, and the shared ambition that once felt like a level playing field. Now, the gap between them was a chasm. Sarah was building a legacy, while Elena was watching her own dream stall in real time. She looked at the blank appointment book again, then back at the phone. The comparison hit with the force of a physical blow. Her practice was not just struggling, it was invisible. She dropped the phone onto the desk, the plastic clattering against the wood, and walked toward the window. The city lights outside seemed to mock her hesitation, pulsing with a rhythm that had no place for her. Elena pulled her gaze from the window and walked back to the desk. She ignored the stack of bills. She pushed the unpaid notices to the edge of the table, clearing a small patch of wood. She reached into her drawer, pulled out a fresh notebook, and opened it to the first blank page. She gripped her pen, the plastic casing cool against her palm, and felt the tension in her shoulders begin to loosen. She did not look at the rent due next week. She did not calculate the dwindling balance in her bank account. Instead, she wrote one date at the very top of the page, 10 years from today. Her handwriting was sharp, deliberate, and steady. Below the date, she began to list her requirements for that future. A practice that sustained itself, total financial autonomy, and a body of written work that defined her field. Each word was an anchor. As she listed the goals, the room felt less like a cage and more like a workspace. The silence was no longer heavy. It was a blank canvas. She set the pen down, looked at the list, and for the first time in months, her hands stopped shaking. 2 days later, an email arrived from a firm promising high-volume lead generation. The subject line pulsed with urgency: instant client growth. Elena opened the attachment. The proposal was simple, aggressive, and cheap. It relied on mass automated outreach that would flood the market with her name, but strip away any semblance of professional identity. She scanned the terms. It offered quick cash, a way to pay the rent due the following week and silence the immediate pressure of her dwindling savings. She looked at the screen, then glanced at the notebook sitting open on her desk. She compared the agency's hollow promise of rapid expansion against the structural integrity she had mapped out for the next decade. The choice was not complicated. She clicked the decline button, typed a brief rejection, and sent it. The screen went dark, returning her to the quiet of her office. She did not hesitate. She did not reread the offer to see if she had missed a loophole. The temptation of fast money vanished the moment she prioritized the long-term horizon. She pulled the notebook closer, flipped to a new page, and began sketching the outlines of her next research project. Elena pulled up her banking portal. The figure on the screen was low, a stark reminder of her narrow margin for error. She had enough for one major move, and only one. She closed the tab and opened the registration page for the advanced certification program. It was expensive, demanding, and required a full commitment of her remaining capital. Her peers argued against it over coffee, their voices tight with caution. They pointed to the economy, to the lack of steady income, and to the safer, more conservative paths they were taking. Elena listened, nodded, and said nothing. She knew that safety was a trap that would stall her decade-long plan before it could even gather momentum. She returned to her desk, logged back into the portal, and initiated the wire transfer. The confirmation screen flickered. Her account balance dropped to a near-zero state. There was no going back. She closed the laptop, walked to her bookshelf, and pulled down the heavy manuals required for the course. She cleared her desk, stacked the books, and laid out her highlighters. The money was gone, the risk was absolute, and the work began immediately. The certification program demanded more than just time. It required every waking hour. Elena shifted her world to the desk. She kept a carafe of black coffee at her side, though it rarely stayed warm for long. By the second month, the cycle became rigid. Study until the eyes blurred. Rest for 3 hours, then return to the text. Her hands began to shake during the long drafting sessions late at night. She ignored the tremor, gripping the pen tighter to keep her lines steady. There were nights when her baguette hit the desk and she slept in the cold light of the monitor, only to wake with the sharp ache of a cramped neck and the crushing realization that the deadline was still looming. She kept a calendar on the wall, marking each finished module with a heavy black cross. The fatigue was a physical weight, pressing against her chest like an iron plate. She stood up, paced the small room to force blood back into her legs, and stared at the 10-year goal pinned to the door. The exhaustion was a temporary obstacle. The knowledge she was building was permanent. She sat back down, opened the next manual, and started reading again. The shift did not start with a bang, but with the quiet sound of packing tape. Elena heard it from her own window, a sharp, rhythmic tearing that echoed across the street. A delivery truck pulled up to the clinic next door, not to drop off supplies, but to haul away desks and filing cabinets. 2 more offices on the block followed within the week. The lights in those windows stayed dark, the signs taken down, leaving only rectangular shadows on the brick facades. Elena walked the neighborhood, noting the mounting pile of debris on the curb, shredded documents, broken chairs, and discarded equipment. The local economy was unraveling in real time. She watched the owner of the firm across the hall lock his door, his hands trembling as he pocketed the keys for the last time. He did not look back. The street felt hollow, stripped of its usual hum of professional life. Every morning brought news of another business folding, another colleague retreating, another storefront boarded up. The air was thick with the scent of stagnant dust and abandoned ambition. The world around her was rapidly shrinking, the infrastructure of her industry collapsing into a vacuum of uncertainty. She returned to her office, locked the deadbolt, and listened to the silence of the vacant street outside. The panic was contagious, but Elena refused to catch it. She watched from her desk as the street grew quieter each day, yet her mind remained anchored to the horizon. While others scrambled to liquidate assets or cut critical services, Elena pulled her ledger open. She analyzed the shifting needs of her clients, identifying the new pain points created by the downturn. She did not shrink her offerings. She evolved them. She spent 3 days mapping out a new service structure on her whiteboard, erasing lines and redrawing connections until the logic held firm. When a longtime client called in a state of alarm, she spoke with a calm that cut through the static, offering a tailored solution that kept them on the books. This was not just about staying open. It was about capturing the space others were abandoning. She worked through the nights, drafting new proposals that addressed the current economic reality. By the time the dust settled, she was the only clinic left on the block with its lights still burning. The survival was not a stroke of luck. It was the result of the compounding interest of every choice she had made over the last 3 years. She leaned back, looked at her empty appointment book, and saw not a failure, but an opening. 7 years of compounding effort led to this boardroom. The table was polished mahogany, the air cool and filtered, a sharp contrast to the radiator hiss of her first office. Elena sat at the head, the leather chair firm beneath her. Across the table, the corporate representatives waited. She pushed the contract forward, her pen hovering over the signature line. This deal would triple her annual income. It was not a sudden victory, but a calculated arrival. She scanned the final page, checking the clauses she had insisted upon months prior, ensuring every detail aligned with the trajectory she set when she had nothing but a notebook and a long-term goal. The representatives watched her, waiting for a sign of hesitation or thrill, but she felt only the steady rhythm of a plan executed to the letter. She pressed the pen to the paper, The ink flowed, dark and permanent. She signed her name, closed the folder, and looked up. The room was silent. The deal solidified, the math of her life finally coming to balance. She stood, picked up her briefcase, and walked toward the glass doors. The magnitude of the moment was heavy, yet it felt entirely familiar, as if she had walked this specific floor 1,000 times in her mind before ever stepping foot in the building. Elena returned to her desk, the quiet of the room a stark contrast to the bustle of the boardroom. She pulled the tattered original notebook from her drawer. The pages were worn, the edges soft from years of frequent handling. She opened it to the first entry, the one written in an empty office when the future was nothing but a gamble. She traced the lines of her original goals, the practice, the independence, the legacy. Each point had been achieved, then surpassed. She did not linger on the triumph. She placed her hand flat against the paper, feeling the weight of the years beneath her palm, then snapped the book shut. The sound echoed briefly in the stillness. She reached for a fresh blank notebook, pulling it into the center of the desk. She clicked her pen, the sharp sound signaling the end of one cycle and the beginning of the next. She looked through the window at the city skyline, already mapping the shifts in the market, the potential for new service models, and the reach of her influence over the coming 10 years. She touched the nib to the pristine paper. She began to write. The ink tracked steadily across the page, capturing a new vision with the same methodical precision that had built everything before it.